Namaste, greetings. I can quickly see that we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Welcome to episode number 116. Once again, I'm back. I admit that some of the recent episodes have been a little erratic. I'm not following the same pattern of 3 to 4 shows a week, a month. But the intention is to get you guests that actually make an impact and influence you into either thinking differently or doing some changes in your life, so that these shows can not just be a talk show. They can actually go a little deeper and help you achieve something. So in that spirit, I'm back, and even though the frequency is a little altered these days, but my promise remains that I'll try and bring you the best possible guests on each topic. Before we get into the topic for the day, I just want to make sure that if you are on, because technology plays weird games, if you can see this, hear this live on LinkedIn and YouTube, please let me know in your comments, and that will tell me that everything is working fine. Because uh, even though I work in technology, I also know that technology can play uh, games. Okay, coming to the topic. So, topic for the day is more around people, and I in this cutthroat era of managing by quarter, managing by P&L, making sure you meet the numbers. At least in the last 10 odd years, maybe more, we can see that the premise or the myth that business and numbers and outcomes are the most important thing has become very dominant. And I come from a time where people, relationship, working with people, collaboration, cooperation, all these things were a little more dominant. I'm not saying 90-10. I'm saying 65-40 in those kinds. But what seasoned professionals in the industry will tell you is that eventually people matter. Everything has to be done, even now, in spite of all the, you know, hawabaji around AI and all that. Eventually, people matter. People do the work. And even if it is AI, people will do the AI work. So I've been thinking of a guest who can actually talk about why do people make all the difference. Right? Yeah, people make the difference. We understand that, or basically we know that it is some kind of a truth. So I was looking for some guest, and a couple of months ago, I was at a event for working mothers and returning mothers. That kind of a event, and I'm still surprised that I was invited, but I was. Of course, I do realize that as a senior professional, they wanted my point of view on why it is important for companies to support returning mothers or working mothers, and are they actually supporting. So I was speaking in favor, and on the panel was a fantastic guest, uh, co-panelist Saurabh Nigam. I had heard of him, known of him, but never met or never crossed paths. And we hit along well, and I realized that he has a lot to contribute. And apart from, of course, being a top voice, apart from being a fantastic voice in the world of HR, regularly rated as top 10, top 25 of HR voices in India, that kind of a person. He's also written a recent book around people and why people make a difference. So occurred to me that why not speak to Saurabh. So I won't give you a formal introduction to Saurabh. You can, in this age of LinkedIn, you can always go to LinkedIn and check out his profile. So if you are interested in things which are HR, things which are related to people, things which are outcome related, please check Saurabh out, and you will surely like. He's recently become an entrepreneur and started a company, so Pro Growth People Solutions, so which is fantastically just launched into helping companies and individuals with people related topics. Nice move. In a time when everybody is trying to open a startup around AI, here's a man whose startup is around people. So with that, I will invite good friend now, Saurabh. Saurabh ji, namaskar, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anshuman.
Uh,
Thank you very much, and such lovely and kind words. So thanks a lot for that.
no, my pleasure. I still go back to the meeting we had, and where we didn't realize that, a chance meeting at a conference will be such a good click. So thank you for your generosity with time and wisdom. And
Thank you very
I
much
can
for
safely say
inviting.
that I think the feeling is mutual. So,
Absolutely. No,
uh,
no, absolutely. No, thanks a lot for
so
inviting me over. I've heard your show multiple times. I've been following you much before we met actually as well. And so the moment you presented this proposal to be on your show, I said, yeah, absolutely. I've been waiting for it. Well, let's do it. And that right, the time is absolutely right. God has been kind. I've just started my own company, penned a book which is going to come release later this month. What better way to talk about it than with you on this forum? So
so
thank you
ये
for.
सब छोड़ो, ये सब हवाबाजी. I know you have a physical copy of the book. Nobody else has. Where is it?
I have 10 of them right now.
So दिखाओ दिखाओ कम से कम. Is it
So
somewhere nearby?
as you would imagine, those 10 copies अभी मंदिर में रखी हुई हैं. My mom has ensured that I keep
Are so
it.
I will not press you further, but
Yeah,
maybe once it is publicly available, we will
okay,
do another quick thing, maybe a meetup or something,
absolutely.
and I can invite my Bangalore friends, and we can do a
Very
quick
good.
meetup around that, right?
Absolutely. Would love
Because
to.
the book is actually more around a topic that I truly love, around people, and like I was speaking in the introduction, sort of the in the world of AI and all of these things, it is still people doing all the work. I am
Right.
yet to find that basic change. And I work in technology, so I mean, I should be talking something else. But uh, even in technology, we find that eventually people make all the difference, and that is what we will try and discuss. And but before we get there, I just quickly wanted to check. Okay, yeah. So this show is now going live to your followers also, Saurabh,
Okay. Thank you.
and which is a new feature on this. So hopefully, people from your network can also join
Yeah.
and enjoy. And it will stay live as a recording on your
Okay.
feed.
Perfect. Perfect.
So good.
Thank
Okay, so the format of the talk or the conversation is firstly it is a conversation, so it's not an interview. I keep telling everybody that these 116 episodes that I've done
you.
with approximately 113 guests, I think two of them were repeats or something. So repeats, I think the same guest was here twice,
Okay.
but it's like private tuition with an audience. So so I I am here to learn, and in on some topics I am here to contribute as well.
Yeah.
So we'll keep it conversational, but I
Perfect.
do have some questions, and around midway during the show we'll start taking
Sure.
audience questions as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So first question usually is a little provocative from my side, is that we are all professionals, and at least from a process management point of view, I am a I would say consultant or a process minded person.
Right.
The process should take care. Why should people even matter? So if everybody is a professional and process is taking care, why should people even matter?
Yeah.
So that is the opening googly, and now over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, the actually it's a great question. I'm a firm believer of process as well. I'm a stickler to process. In fact, one of the things which I really like about your your profile is the when you talk about various process excellence stuff, and I've read a lot of what you write. Stickler for process, no doubt about it, and I firmly believe in that. The element which process cannot solve for is the fact that human beings feel and have emotions, right, and have a brain with them,
Hmm.
right, and therefore they have aspiration, they have expectations, right. A process will not be able to solve for it, right. That is where you need to be aware about the fact that every, I mean, it's a cliche to say every individual is different, every individual is wired differently, and you cannot come up with a process which will cater to all of those permutation and combinations which will emerge just because every single individual is different, right. And that's where the people element or people side of leadership or in organization it becomes very critical and very important, right, because you can't box it. That, I mean, you talked about AI in
Hmm.
your introduction, and I love the way you presented it. Yeah, AI is a great tool, but I firmly believe AI cannot replace humans, right, because simply because at least in my uh, wisdom or whatever I have learned about the people and people mindset, we are so wired differently, and there's so many permutation and combination that the element, for example, what we are doing right now, the conversation, right? And you've thrown a googly at me, and I'm going to respond basis my thinking, and then you're gonna have we're gonna have a conversation around it. It's impossible to replace that, and therefore a process is required, but a process driven organization with a focus on people and understanding that the people are different, and therefore you need to be able to cater to their needs, aspirations, and expectations is how it operates, right? So again, I'm completely in sync with you and say that, can we have a team and an organization or a setup without process? 100% no. It will be chaotic. There is absolutely no doubt about it. But I mean,
Hmm.
you're a process excellence person, and you would know that any process which you create, there is room for exceptions, and those room for exceptions gets created because human minds work differently or wired differently.
And good that you brought in process excellence, because e- most of my roles in the last 10-15 years, and particularly when I was in the banking operations processes, Saurabh, I realized that it is the exception processes that actually make or break
Yeah,
most banks. Otherwise, and I'm just giving a banking example because of the context that I am using. The process is the same. The game is made or broken in the exceptions. So bank A, bank B, same loan process, same form, same everything. In one bank, the process is followed by the people in a way that 99.99% go through in one go, yes or no, whatever is the credit answer. In another bank, it is 98.3, and
yeah,
that 1%, 1.5%, actually, you might be surprised, or you might have seen, but audience might be surprised, that sometimes it takes 20 to 25% or even more budget of the team
yeah,
to process that 1% exception.
yeah, yeah.
So these two banks that I operated in, I actually created exception processes teams
Exactly.
and kept the best people there
Yeah,
so that they can quickly
resolve.
resolve the issue and not let it linger on. So you brought in a fantastic point that actually process and people go hand in hand,
Yeah,
and just as process varies, people vary, and people have more variation because of background, context, mood, biological swings. You and I are at an age where we might think differently from a 25-year-old, and so on. So, right, I think very good start.
also, Anshuman, if I may
Yeah.
come in, also, we define process, but ultimately process have to adhere and run by people, right?
Hmm.
And therefore they need to go hand in hand, right? So, and as you rightly said, a process, as much as we try, will never be 100% foolproof. And how do you manage that edge case is, which is what you were talking from an exception handling, then decide that how well you are putting it, implementing it on the ground, right? And ultimately, it will be your people who will be taking it to the ground. So that's where
Absolutely.
it boils down to.
Yeah, I think and while you were speaking, I was looking for the link to your book, which we will paste in some time.
Okay.
But so that's an opener that I was looking for. That why should actually this topic even matter? And I hope people got a wind of why. And those in audience, you will notice that we are both from a background which is 25, 30 years experience. We have seen various phases of life, and what we are saying today is based on all that background and experience. So we are generally not swayed by the headlines or trends of yesterday and today. And I understand that when you are 25, you might get swayed by the headlines and trends of today, but over a period of time that should change.
Yeah.
um, some people have made very good comments. So I think Yasmin, thank you very much. And Vivek is a regular on this series. Vivek is a LinkedIn growth expert himself.
Okay.
And those who are looking for some LinkedIn support and all, you can reach out to Vivek, and a lot of other comments, which I will try and bring from time to time. But returning to your story, of course, Saurabh, you are not a out and out born in HR kind of a professional. I know that. So, how and when did this happen? And tell us a little bit in summary, so that for two reasons. One, of course, I do want the audience to know that there's nothing called a born HR professional. There is nothing called, any kind of, you can learn everything and you can excel.
Yeah.
And two, also it, because it gives some hope to people who might be wanting to shift professions, including myself. So
Yeah.
over to you now.
Yeah. So as you rightly said, Anshuman, I'm an engineer by background. I've done my bit of coding for a few years. I understand tech fairly decently well, I would say. My initial couple of years of my career, I was coding for a company called Canby, which later on got acquired by Capgemini. And it's during that phase, after a couple of years of doing coding, I got an opportunity to do some training for some of the folks who were coming new into the organization on the software application on which I used to write codes on, right? And that was my whatever if you, terminology you want to use, but my first exposure to what HR was all about, right? I mean, I used to be a subject matter expert, and that's what they used to say, a trainer on that application. I used to train people coming in from campus, and then because it was a function which was closely linked to HR, gave me first hand experience or exposure to what HR is all about. And what I like the fact, and I'll be very honest with you, as a 23, 24-year old, what really resonated with me was the high which you get when you're in a classroom, and when people come into that room, fresh graduates coming in, have no idea about what you're going to teach, and 3 months later they pass out and they go to these projects, and they people say, hey, wow, amazing, that they're doing really well. And that was a high. And I said, honestly, that high was unparalleled. And high of writing a code and that doing code doing well was no match to write a high of training someone well, and that's that
Hmm.
individual going and performing well and coming back and thanking you, or that project manager saying, hey, listen, that batch which you trained is doing exceptionally well. And that's the time I was preparing for my MBA exams and all of that. And honestly, up until that time, I didn't have any idea that, okay, what would I'm going to specialize in if I were to make it to an MBA school. But that 1 year of training actually made me say, okay, if this is what I want to do, I mean, if I want to do an MBA, why not specialize in this space? Because that high was, I was riding on that high, I'll be very honest with you, right? And that's how, and as luck would have had it, I got through Accelerate, specialized in HR. 2007 is when I started off. Little did I realize that HR is way beyond just training. Like, HR is way beyond just standing in a classroom and teaching, or speaking to 30 odd people. But then the journey has been exciting since then, right? I mean, I didn't know what startups is all about. I was lucky that in my first role at Aditya Birla Group, I happened to be with the retail business, the more stores. Not a single store had opened when I joined that business. So actually, in a large conglomerate, I actually ended up getting an experience of what it meant to build out organization from a people perspective, right? And then after that, just became almost like a choice, because I had seen the setting up of an organization from a people side. And since then, I have made it a conscious call that I've been associated with organizations which were in the setup mode or the growth mode, and then contributing my bit from a people perspective. And that's how I've gone about building it. I mean, I say this a lot. I didn't really get into HR. As I said, I mean, if that training experience had not happened, possibly I would not have specialized in HR. And then within HR also, I would not have had like 17, 18 years of startup experience if I had not had that chance of working with the retail business of Aditya Birla Group at a point of time when not a single store had opened in the country. I actually was part of the
Hmm.
business when first 300, 400 stores opened. And since then, the journey has been with the younger organization, so to say. And that's what my book is all about as well, right? So that's how HR happened to me. It's been 18, 19 years now. But as I said, the trigger was very different, and over a period of time, many things have happened. I've learned a lot more, many more things. Happy to discuss today or at any given point of time. But yeah, that's really how HR happened.
Fantastic. Now I'm trying to share. Are you able to see the screen, Saurabh?
Yes, Anshuman, thanks a lot for putting it
Ah,
out.
so, people, this is the book, and one anecdote, or you can say, trivia. Hari, T and Hari and Ankur Wariku both have been on this show.
Oh, nice.
and now Saurabh Nigam is joining them on this show as well. The book is called People Powered Startups, and it is currently already available on Amazon. I think you know currently for pre-order, but you will get it if you order it now. You will get it
First week of
quickly.
March.
Right, fantastic. So
Thank you.
back to and those who want to quickly find the book, I have put the short link on the screen as well. You can go, and if you are interested, People Powered Startups is the name of the book.
Yep. Thank
Okay,
you.
back to the topic. So that's how you got into HR. I think I do ask this question, sort of not because, of course, only understanding your story and sometimes people who have known you, it might be a good revision to story. But those who don't know you will carry the fact that okay, here comes a guy who is not from that area, tried something, liked it, found a way into it, and then made a career out of it. And this is how most successful careers are made. If you
Mm.
ask anybody who's 50, 55, who seemingly has a successful career, everybody likes him or her, you ask them, their journey was not as well planned as it might
Yeah.
appear on their LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile, you only see the milestones, you don't see
Correct.
the
Journey.
journey, right?
Yeah.
In any, I'm just using LinkedIn profile because we are on LinkedIn right now.
Yeah.
But so keep that in mind, that if you like something and if you think you have the talent, if you think you have the, you can put in that hard work to make that talent succeed, right? So talent alone is not going to work. If you can put that hard work to make the talent work, then there is absolutely no limit these days, and you can change fields and you can go into other fields and succeed as well as anybody else. So
Yeah.
that's the reason why I asked this question, and there have been quite a few guests in the last 10, 15 episodes where I found this very interesting pattern that none of them started in the area where they are now popular for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's probably the defining thing of about our generation. You are not as old as I am, but I will still use that
No, I
age
should.
group.
Yeah.
Hmm?
And I should, that exactly absolutely an apt point, right? I mean, the leap of faith which I've taken now, right? For longest period of time, and I've all pretty much all my career I've worked with entrepreneurs, right, in startups. And
Hmm.
one thing I, as much as would, and I still, look up to entrepreneurs. I really, feel that it takes a very different DNA to start something of your own and stick to it. For the longest period of time, I would work with them and I'll say, listen, I don't think I have that DNA to be an entrepreneur, right? I'm
Hmm.
happy doing what I'm doing, which is contributing my bit towards these organizations' growth through strong people practices, which I will design and implement. But I don't think I have the DNA to be an entrepreneur myself. And look, that's exactly what I've gotten into now, right? So still early days. I don't know where it's going to lead me to. But as you rightly said, right, it is really a question of you having the belief and that trigger, and different people have different triggers, and then going after it with I mean I have a very uh, what's your often used term which is used, which is once you decide to do something, you need to go all in, right? Because that's the
Correct.
only way you're giving yourself a chance to succeed, right? Now when you decide to go and do something, that's your call, right? I never thought I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and that's exactly the role I'm playing today, right? And let's see, I'm prepared
So
and
the
I'm absolutely going all into it. Let's see where it leads to. That's where it is.
Nene, you are very well prepared. And the term sort of I have, you were hesitating you to use a term that you might use. The term I use is half pregnant. So you you can't be half pregnant when you get into
Yeah,
a new area. You have to go all in, and
you
like you
have to go
said,
right.
mm, that hard work will show. Then the debate of 70 hours, 120 hours is meaningless because
It's meaningless.
every waking hour is devoted to
Oh yeah,
what you want to give
absolutely.
to. Okay, so a quick reminder to the audience, those who are live, you get the special chance to ask a question to Saurabh, and to ask me as well. I may not have the answer, but but you can do that. This is the advantage of joining live because in the recording you don't get to ask questions, or at least your question will not be picked up. Okay, so go ahead and ask wherever you joined, whether on LinkedIn or whether Saurabh's LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, or my YouTube, wherever you are. If you have a question, please go ahead. Okay. So moving on, my I'm trying to phrase the question, but if we have to be a more pro people, it should be across the life cycle. That's what I think. You
Oh yeah,
can't be pro people during learning phase, or you can't be pro people suddenly at the exit phase. And I know some organizations who suddenly start loving the employee when they have resigned. so,
yeah,
so that is very amusing, but it is true. So if they had shown half the love, the person may not have resigned anyway. So have you seen this happen, that the same intensity of being pro people across the life cycle from hire to retire? And hire to retire is a common term used in the industry for the entire life cycle, but there are other terms as well. But hire to retire is quite easy to understand. Have you
yeah.
seen that the same intensity of being pro people across hire to retire, or in your experience also you've not seen this, and only in hire, or only in retire, or only in grow? Any examples, or if you can't name the companies, at least you can describe
Yeah.
what you felt.
Yeah. So, Anshuman, the way to look at it, it's a great question actually, and I firmly believe that it's not even an option, right? That you focus only a certain part of the life cycle of an individual, and then do not focus on the other. The analogy which I use typically to explain this is really if I look at any team or an organization as a funnel, right? There's a top of the funnel, which is really where you're hiring, where you're looking for people to come into the funnel, and funnel being the organization. And then funnel is where people come in who you've selected, you've hired, and then they are within that funnel for a specific period of time, and then they exit out, right? I firmly believe that it's all three are equally important, and I'll tell you why. Because each place where an individual gets in touch with your organization, with your team, he's potentially becoming an ambassador for you. Good or bad will be defined by what kind of a treatment, or how what kind of an experience you're giving to the individual, right? So let's talk about top of the funnel, right? There are organizations do extremely well when it comes to the experience which you provide to candidates through your hiring process, right?
Hmm.
And that's important because, as I said, whether you hire a person or not, just by the fact that I'm interviewing with you or your team members, I'm forming a perception about your organization, right? You may not hire me for whatever reasons, skill mismatch, expectation mismatch, compensation mismatch. That's perfectly fine. But the proof of the pudding of a hiring process really lies with the fact that even if you don't hire me, do I speak good or positive about your organization and the hiring process which you have gone taken me through that, right? If I don't, somewhere down the line, you and your organization is missing out on the fact that at some point in time, some good candidates are not going to apply to your organization because they've heard from me not talking so great thing, right? So that becomes the top of the funnel. Inside the funnel, inside the organization, people do different things, and there are enough and more stories out there in terms of engagement, in terms of experience you give to people. That's a given, right? And I almost feel that if you're not treating your people well once you're when they're inside the organization, you're missing the entire point itself, right? You put in the
Hmm.
lot of effort top of the funnel getting people inside. If you don't give them the experience, the environment, and a platform for them to express themselves, utilize their skills, you're actually short charging your own self as an organization, right? So, I mean, we have seen a lot of organizations work on that, and honestly, that is the part which gets spoken about multiple times in different forums, and learning, development, career paths. All of those things are things which you do inside the funnel, right? I'm not going to touch upon that a lot because that's quite obvious, and you need to do that, right? And only then you're going to have a set of folks who are at their productive best, right? That's let's put it that way. But then comes the last part, which is once people are exiting out of that funnel, right? And how you treat people when they exit out as they're exiting from the organization, again, bears a lot on the kind of brand which you're creating for the organization. Just like at the top of the funnel, any candidate experiencing you as an organization needs to have a positive experience. When I'm exiting out, whether I've spent 2 years or 10 years in the organization, right? What kind of a treatment I get, what kind of an experience I get, is extremely critical, because once I leave, I still am an ambassador for the organization, right? So,
Hmm.
so to me, it's a continuum, and that continuum has to be maintained. And any organization which does well across all three aspects, top of the funnel, with inside the funnel, and exiting out of the funnel, is the organization which will ultimately differentiate itself. And there are enough and more examples out there, right? You really don't have a choice that you will only focus inside the funnel. That's not gonna help you create a strong brand or an employer brand which will help you scale and grow as you would imagine it would to be.
I think awesome. I didn't see it as a funnel, so thank you for that analogy or metaphor or the way to look at it. And these things help because uh, while you are explaining, one can visualize. Okay, this is what how you are talking. So thanks for that, Saurabh.
Sure.
Some really good comments coming in. Rajni, thank you very much. And Rushabh is speaking about career pivots. Rushabh, I am going through a career pivot myself, so I relate to what you're saying. More details next week. But one question. This question has come from your network, Saurabh. I You can't see the name here, but I checked. The name is Sunil G.
Okay.
So Sunil has asked, what is your thinking on future of HR job path over the next decade, 10 years or so?
Okay.
Anything that you see for HR? And obviously, this question is in the context of technology and overplay of technology these days, and
Right.
which my view is that which will calm down in a few weeks
Yeah.
and months,
Mhm.
and things will get normalized. But
Yeah.
right now, there is a little hyper focus on technology.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that this question is in that context.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I was hoping to as well, because otherwise this question is very loaded, and I'm going to obviously give a very biased answer because I'm an HR professional and now an entrepreneur in the field of HR, right? So, but yes, and obviously I'm going to extend it beyond technology. I'm going to be very specific about AI itself because you started the
Hmm.
conversation with AI, human, right? So here is what I had read. This is not my original quote. I don't think someone said it very beautifully that AI is going to replace humans, right? What is going to happen is humans who are able to leverage AI better than the others will outshine the other individual. That definitely is going to happen, right? And that is true for any technological advancement. I mean, through the years, if
Definitely.
you look at it, right? So 90s, early 2000s, people who were able to leverage technology, and when I say people, I'm also including organizations, right, who were able to ride and leverage technology, obviously created a differentiation for
So
themselves.
why only that, Saurabh? Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Right.
When writing would have been discovered,
Yeah.
people who could write survived, and they
Exactly.
wrote history that we read today.
Absolutely.
So there were other people who could not write. They are
Absolutely.
dead and buried, and nobody knows their names.
Absolutely.
So this is true for thousands of years, that anybody who masters or at least gets familiar and accustomed to the new, I won't call it trend, but new option available,
Right.
they will have a longer, better, more successful career. And this is
Absolutely.
true for
Any field.
at least 10,000 years from when recorded writing history is available. I give this
Right.
example a lot, that why do you think AI is new today? Think of people when they could not write and somebody came around and started writing.
All right. Yeah.
Uh, and when people were writing and then came around the Hindenburg press.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
and I are speaking in English today, which was not the prominent language until 1200 and 1300
Yeah.
AD. But because in 1500 Hindenburg press found the Roman numerals the easiest to make a press out of,
Right.
English became the global language. English
Yeah.
was not the language.
Right.
Spanish was more popular, Italian was more popular, everything else was more popular than English. But English was easier to create a numeral set on the
Abs-
press,
Absolutely.
and boom, where you are. So sorry, back to you. I just thought
No,
I
no,
will add this bit.
no, you actually helped me answer the question itself. And therefore, I firmly believe, Anshuman, that yes, AI or technology for that matter, and it will continue evolving because there are people who are working on that, right? I mean, that's their bread and
Absolutely.
butter, right? So technological advancements are going to continue to happen. Some of these will technological advancements will remain, some will fizzle out, as you rightly said. We can only pass judgment about it on hindsight, few years down the line. Uh, I think what is important is to continuously figure out how do you invent and reinvent yourself in the midst of all these advances which are coming through, right? So assuming AI is here to stay, right? uh,
Hmm.
I fundamentally don't think AI is going to replace humans. It just cannot happen, is my view, right? But can it fundamentally shift the way a function is running, is performing? Let's say HR itself, 100%. There is absolutely no doubt. We already have use cases, right? So if I
Correct.
look at my own example, uh, simple thing, a mail which I would take about half an hour to write to my team, to my organization, now I end up taking 5 minutes, right? Because I don't spend a lot of time polishing it, right? It's a
Yeah.
very lame example, but it saves me 25 minutes. Now what I do with those 25 minutes is gonna define whether I am scaling myself to write the wave or not. That's important.
Uh,
If I end up using those 25 minutes to watch OTT, then obviously I'm short charging myself. But if I use those 25 minutes to have a conversation with my leader, or have, training sessions, or work on my HR strategy for the next cycle, or my budgets, or XYZ things, I'm upskilling myself, or I'm making sure that I remain relevant. So I think that's where it would boil down to. Specifically, if you talk about within HR, I mean, I can go on talking about talent acquisition to compensation to HR business partnering. Each of these roles will remain. I don't see them going, but the way these roles will pan out, and how they will leverage, how you end up leveraging technology to make yourself, keep yourself relevant, is really where the entire game will get played out. That's where it would be.
Really well said, sir. And just to answer Sunil's question and expand it beyond HR also, because there might be people who are
Yeah,
not from HR background in this. This is actually true for everything, right?
yeah,
So whatever we are doing, the ways and means in how we are doing those things today will change. So that is a given. Now, whether it will change 100%, it will disappear, it will change 10%, depends on a lot of factors. But the human element will remain, and the people who mastered or at least become very familiar with the new options available, like hundreds of times in history, will once again do well. I am in a field where every 5 years I see a trend, and some years ago, process automation was a huge trend. Now process automation is a given, that if you are in the process excellence field or operational excellence field, you should know about process automation. If you don't know, then
yeah.
you're not a process excellence person. Okay. Since you use the word startup in your book, Saurabh, abhi aap phas gaye, so there is one question. um, Anushka, I am not wearing my glasses, but Anushka Arora has asked a question. How do you plan change management in startups? And as there's high resistance to change, plus people centric element is prioritized less, as the focus is more on driving profitability. Anushka, first of all, I can tell you that the story is no different in non startups. So you have qualified your question for startup. Maybe that is your background, or that's the context in which you are asking the question. But this question is very relevant. I work for a large global IT services firm. And for the last 10, 15 years, maybe more than that, actually 20 years or so, I've worked in primarily large global MNC setups. And I can tell you, you can just replace the word startup and the question is still relevant.
Right, right. And
But over to you, Saurabh.
and,
Hmm.
and that's and I was going to say exactly this, right? And that's exactly why change management is a subject which will never change, or will never die away, right? Because that's change is the only constant, as they say, right? And therefore, how do you manage the change will never fade away from fashion. Uh, how do you prepare yourself? How do you plan for it, Anushka? There are multiple things which play here, right? And I'm sure Anshuman will going to add to it, given his much higher years of experience behind him. But if for any change to come alive, I think you need to first understand the context and get the rationale behind why you bringing in a change, or why you want to bring in a change, right? I think that's very important for you to even make an attempt to get the buy-in from your stakeholders. And those stakeholders are your leaders, those stakeholders is your teams and your organizations at large, right? Now, there are multiple ways to get that buy-in. I think one is obviously to make sure that you have the data and the analysis backing you up. You have you've done your research to suggest a change, and stuff like that. Another way to make sure that you get the buy-in is to see if you could try it out or do some pilots in some smaller parts of the organization. But the point which is very important is to get the buy-in, and the buy-in, without the buy-in, a change management will never work, right? So now what way you get the buy-in will depend on the context and obviously your stakeholders and your ability to bring that right. Once you have the buy-in, I to me, half the battle is won, because if you have the buy-in, then you have the and buy-in from the leadership, I would say, then you have half the battle won, because then now you have the sponsorship of the leadership to go ahead and make those change happen. Now, as you start implementing those changes, one thing very important is that you need to be on the top of your game while designing those interventions or implementations or change management or the changes which you want to bring in life, right? And if you're not on the top of your game, if you're going in half baked, it's bound to fail, right? So that's incumbent upon you to be at the top of your game. Once you've got the buy-in, get the design in place, test it out, pilot it out, and be ready for the fact, as they say, right, in change management, that the first reaction will always be a pushback, shock and pushback, because that's typically how a human brain is wired, right? Because if you are conditioned to work in a certain manner, and I'm sure you will have so many examples to give, even a small change in a process will receive a pushback, right? And that pushback, you need to be prepared for that pushback, because that's very common, right? And the way to prepare yourself, as I said, is how strong your design and your conviction is towards that design, right? And one of the aspects of designing any intervention is, again, as Anshuman said in his opening remarks, is to be prepared for these pushbacks, these shock reactions which will come in, and then be able to address those, right, through different ways and means, by spending time with individuals, by handholding them, and so on and so forth. And then as you go along the journey, also showcasing the small wins which will come along as you start implementing these changes, right? So three-pronged or four-pronged approach, as I said, get the buy-in through data, through analysis, through research, through some pilots. Once you have the buy-in, make sure that your design is absolutely pakka, absolutely spot on. Be prepared for the shock and the pushback which is going to happen. 100% is going to happen. It's not just startups, everywhere it's going to happen. Fourth, make sure that you highlight the wins, right, as you go about the change, so that there are more people who absorb that change and adopt to that change. To me, that's really how you go about it. I haven't seen any other way work, but I would love to hear from you, Anshuman, as well. You suddenly have gone on mute, Anshuman. Can't hear you.
I'm told I sound better on mute, so every once in a while I try that. But Anushka's question, I think you summarized fairly well, Saurabh, and coming from your experience and expertise in this area, makes total sense. I would just add one or two key points. One, of course, is that, and Anushka, this is to you and everybody else who's thinking that resistance is bad for change. Actually, it is very good for change. It gives you an opportunity to assess whether you are pushing the right change or not.
Yeah.
In my experience, and I'm 100% sure Saurabh will agree, if everybody in the room is agreeing, that assignment is bound to fail. Absolutely bound to fail. It is not going to happen. So if everybody around you, including in family, right, if everybody is agreeing to the change that you are proposing, right, hoga nahi. Everybody just saying yes, it is not going to happen. So a change or a resistance actually means that there are people in the room who are thinking about actually getting it done. They are not just bad people. They might be thinking about getting it done, and they are saying that, Anushka, you haven't thought this through. This could break down. This could happen. That could happen. This could not work, and I can help you in this. But first, you have to believe that this could happen. So not all resistance is bad. In fact, in physics, if there was no resistance, there is no motion, there is no progress.
Yeah.
So you can take
Nice.
that analogy a little forward as well. Good. Now the questions are coming in, Saurabh. I think people have warmed up to your content. But one reminder to everybody that we will, of course, not be able to take all questions that are coming in. But Saurabh will try and since these questions are mostly on LinkedIn, Saurabh, during the day, tomorrow, whenever you find some time, if you can respond to that. And
Absolutely.
one important thing, people who are at least coming from my network, please do follow Saurabh, because then you will get the answers to what you are asking over a period of few days through his posts and through the content he puts. Otherwise, you don't learn anything in one talk show. You learn over a period of time. So if you're really interested in this topic, find people like Saurabh and then follow them and learn from them. Don't just depend on one ball. Rishabh is asking an interesting question, uh, and I don't know his motivation. He's mid 20s. I know him. How important is for current generation to make an impact so that we will set example for coming generations? You've answered your question, Saurabh, but I'll still ask. For some, they reach success very early in career, and some may take long time to reach. So, probably two questions or 2 points of view, Saurabh. Anything to respond? I think the first one is simple, that it has been true for all generations for forever, from the time humanity has become humanity. So once the we my or mutated from apes and gorillas or orangutans or whatever chimpanzees to human forms, the first homo deus or homo sapiens, from that time this has been extremely important. So but anything on the second one?
So, as I read, for some they reach success very early in career. Some may take long time to reach CXO roles. And again, it's not just about career. It holds true. I mean, if I have to get philosophical, that's really how it pans down to, right? And you really can't define or predict. So do not define, predict. Where you're gonna land up, or how much time you're gonna take to reach a certain level, right? I look at it
Hmm.
very differently. The way I look at it is that what you have in your hand is the effort which you put in, right? What you also have in your hand, the decisions which you take, right? Again, some may argue that decisions are made based on circumstances. Absolutely, but then the circumstances and the environment will only guide you towards a decision. Ultimately, making a decision to do a role, not do a role, be in a company, not in a company, is ultimately yours. Be in a profession,
Hmm.
not in a profession, is ultimately yours. I fundamentally believe that once, and I said this earlier as well, once you have picked something, what you should really focus on is going all in, making sure that you're doing what it takes to succeed in that role at that moment, and then you keep building brick by brick, right? I also believe that a typical person, a normal person like me, and I'm going to include you also in a normal
Sure,
category.
sure.
Okay. Will be working for 3-4 decades, right? We're talking about 25, 30, 40 years of career, right? And therefore it's a marathon. It really is a marathon. And when you run a marathon, you don't think about the 42nd kilometer. You really think about the next kilometer. And within the next kilometer, you think about the next step you're going to take, right? And the next few steps you're going to take, because that will define whether you will continue on that journey and how well you end up reaching that destination, right? Some may argue, and it is absolutely true, that not everybody finishes a marathon, right? That's perfectly fine. But then the best chance you're giving yourself to reach, if the aspiration for you, Rishabh, is to be a CXO, let's say, the best chance you're giving yourself to reach there is to making sure that you're making an impact in the role which you're doing currently, right? You're
Absolutely.
going all in into it, learning the skills, making sure that you're delivering, creating an impact, and delivering. And that is where you will go brick by brick. For some people, it may skyrocket and be faster than for others. Some people run marathons in 2.5 hours. People like me end up taking 5.5 hours. It doesn't matter ultimately, because what matters is the journey which you take and you reach the destination. So what really matters is in that moment how well you're performing and what you're doing to make that impact for on the role you're doing. And that's really how you build a career.
So, Saurabh, check your account. I've sent the money that I promised. If you used the word brick by brick in your sentence, so you use it 3 times, so 300 rupees credited.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
uh, but you know, this is why I like the phrase brick by brick, because it is universal in every sphere of life. If you lay the bricks rightly, sooner or later a brick will appear. Like Rishabh said, some people it may appear earlier and some people it may take longer, but it does work out fairly well. So I just want to make sure, and I'm looking at the time also, Saurabh. We are 50 minutes into the talk. I didn't realize, and I have two important questions which I will mix so that you can quickly answer both. One is, of course, how did this book happen? So nobody goes around thinking that they will start writing a book, particularly on people. But how did the book happen, and how did this entrepreneurship thing happen? So both, if you can wrap up in
Yeah,
a couple of minutes, so that would be
absolutely.
nice.
So let me start with how pro growth people solutions happened, right? So the idea of this got seeded last year, in fact, late 2023. Uh,
Mm,
Around the time when my previous organization, and for the last organization I worked, Omedia Network, which is an impact investment firm, we announced the winding down of our operations in India around December 2023, and that's the
mm,
time where obviously, I mean, once that happened, I was forced to think, okay, what next, right? Where is this journey now going to take, or where is the journey I want to take my journey next, right? And it
mm,
is
mm.
within that, having worked in the startup space, work with a lot of early stage young organization, helping or partnering with entrepreneurs in their journey to build organizations is what I've done. Is when I realized that there is a gap in terms of the right talent in the startup ecosystem from an HR or a people side, which can enable organizations to grow and create an impact for with which they were set up. And I thought this is really the time, having done this for so many years, can I formalize this, and can I create a practice out of it wherein I can bring in like-minded folks, people who are really passionate about people practices in the startup ecosystem, and then we work together and continue making that impact and continue contributing a bit towards it. And that's how Pro Growth People Solutions was born last year in Jan Feb. I announced it formally only couple of months back, but I started working on it around this time last year, and by God's
Oh,
grace,
okay.
yeah. So that's really how Pro Growth People Solutions happened. And then coming to the book itself. So first thing first, I was not into writing till 4 years back. In fact, writing was not even my forte. I used to dread writing, because it's just putting pen to paper. Would say, okay, where do I even start from, right? And I picked up writing 4 years back at the peak of COVID, just because there was so much of time, and I said, okay, let's start something. Can I learn something new? And that's how I started writing. So it's and then I tried different things, started writing on LinkedIn, created some posts on Medium as well. Initially, nothing happened, but I kept at it. Right, I just went on writing. No feedback, nothing. I just and if everything is documented. So if you read my posts or my articles 4 years back versus what I write today, I can see a big change, and that's only because I just kept at it. The idea for book, actually, to be honest, last year again, it's January is when I started writing. I remember 3rd January 2024 is when I first jotted down the things which I would want to write on. I zeroed down on this topic again because as you would imagine, it was my sweet spot, right? Because that's what I've done for last 17, 18 years, which is really working on the HR side or the people side of things in the startup ecosystem in India. And what I realized that through my notes, and I have a habit of writing notes on my computer, on my laptop, and I've got tons and tons of notes, right? And there's so much learning out there, and that's what I use to write my posts or my articles on LinkedIn. I said, can I put this together in one form, right? And that's one form had to be a book, right? Ultimately, and then it became almost like a thing. Really, you say, okay, what is aspirational? What is that moonshot you can think of? And to me, that became a book, right? I said, can I write a
Oh,
book? Is the question which came to mind. And when that became, and also believe that, even that at some point, at any given point, we all should have some moonshot in front of us. It just keeps your bubble in the
absolutely.
center, right? So for almost 8-9 months last year, writing that book became my moonshot, right? And the topic was very clear to me that I will write on this topic because it's my sweet spot. And then, yeah, I mean, that's how I started writing on 3rd of January, finished my 95% of my manuscript was finished in July. And then next process was, writing to publishers and so on and so forth. That's really how
Oh,
it
that's
happened.
a very good turnaround. Most people I know who've written books and have been on this show as well, Saurabh, took about 2 years from starting, and some have taken longer, but in general, median is about 2 years to start writing and then getting the copy in flesh. You
So
got the copy in flesh in 13 months.
pretty much. I had done my manuscript in about 6.5 months, but then what helped me was the topic itself. That topic was my sweet spot. And second, as I said, I had the backing of so many notes which I had prepared over last 17,
Ah,
18 years, and
so
everything was available with
in
me.
a way written the book, but you have to
So
assemble it.
that, yeah, that helped. And then the third thing which helped me, as I said, going all in, right? So 3rd January to 11th July, I don't think there was a day more than a couple of days when I did not write. I was writing every single day for a couple of hours minimum,
Hmm.
every single day.
I think that is the main thing, because
Yeah.
I have told you earlier that I have four books in my head, and all four are being written in my mind.
I'm sure you're not
So,
going to take this long to write once you
uh,
start.
and I know that, the the one that is prominent is the quality for 25-year-old people.
Yeah,
So that operational excellence for youngsters, because it is usually seen as a subject for,
yeah.
older
Mhm.
generation, but it actually makes a lot of sense for younger people. So
I
maybe
would,
now,
if there's,
um, hmm,
I'm younger to you, but if there's one advice I can give you is please write. And I'll tell you why. Apart from the fact that you've got so much of knowledge to share and people will benefit, I mean that's outer. I'm saying internally that entire process of writing a book is phenomenal. It
yeah,
teaches you a lot. It teaches you so many things about your own self, and then the process of getting it published, and that's a different high. I'm not even going there. And just the process, those 6.5 months of putting your head together every days, 2 to 3 hours of your thoughts getting into words. That process is amazing. That just
I
and
I I can see that already, Saurabh, because I've been writing fairly consistently, and some of my posts on LinkedIn are very long posts. I literally use the 3,000 character to the last character. Last character is the dot in the end.
yeah.
So I know what you're saying. I think now I need a kick in my backside, and we'll see who lands that kick.
Sure.
But last few minutes of the conversation, since you're talking about books, anything comes to mind for our readers? What book on this kind of topic, today's topic, other than your book, uh, can they can they
So,
enjoy?
yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying this because Ankur is right there on the cover of my book. He's been here on this show as well, but I'm a big fan of Ankur's writing and his thought process. I mean, he he writes in a manner which anybody can understand, and he
Correct.
writes very specific about his own journey and some of the thoughts from there. I think that's something which I love. The other book which I really looking forward to read, it's not come into my hands, is Sahil's book which is coming. I saw your post on it as well. But these are two people I follow a lot, and I'm big fan of their writing as well. I would highly recommend if I had to pick two authors for whom you should read your book on.
Fantastic. One interesting question has come in. I just want to. There's one question around future of work from Rushabh Mota, but Rushabh, this is a very broad question, but future of work will be there. We'll see when we get there. But it's a very complicated question. If you had something specific, then please let us know. But I wanted to move to actually another question.
Sure.
Um, Praveen Sathe.
Hi, Praveen sir.
Um,
Okay.
so, isn't HR too important to be left only to HR professionals? Isn't the best organization the one where the line manager is absolute brilliant point? I think,
Right.
anything to add to this? I
No,
think
no,
he's already made the point, but if you can
no.
add to it.
And Praveen, I've known Praveen sir for many years. In fact, we were chatting on WhatsApp after many months, day for yesterday, and he's actually already answered that question. I mean, to me,
Hmm.
if we rely only on HR professionals to define things like culture or or experience for your people, we're bound to fail in teams and organizations. I
Bilkul.
fundamentally believe that every single individual needs to play a role. That's really where it boils down to.
And I can confirm that from my part of the world, operational excellence, that's true for us as well.
Yeah.
If operational excellence is only left to operational excellence people, it will become a ritual.
Mhm.
And so like, if I have this strong view that if we leave God only to the pundits, then they will turn it everything into a ritual. So unless we believe, we think about it, only then that change comes in. um, Okay, so Rushabh has improved his question. I mean, future of work shaping up for HR. Anything quickly on this? We are in the last minute, Saurabh.
Rishabh, I think we should speak about this offline because again, it's still very broad, right? And if you really ask
Mm.
me, one thing if I can touch upon is, and I wouldn't say thanks, but because of COVID, the ways of working has fundamentally undergone a shift. There is absolutely no doubt about it. I don't think we're gonna be the way, and that's what happened when something like COVID happens, right? And it's a once in a lifetime. Hopefully, we're going to see something like that. And the reason I say that we're never going to be same is whether we call it hybrid working, remote working, and all of that, work from home versus work from office. Ultimately, there will be an equilibrium which will emerge. What that equilibrium will be is
We
anybody's
don't.
guess. But as HR professionals, being proactive and future looking to say that as this ways of working is evolving, how do you tie that into your people practices, whether it is in on hiring, whether it is on building culture, whether it is building experience for people within the organization. I think that's where the challenge would be for HR professionals. I'm already seeing that some of my clients are 100% remote. Okay. And so 700 member organizations spread across, no one office, there is no office, they're all working remotely, right? How do you create culture, how do you create a connective tissue in a setup like that? I don't have an answer. Okay, I'm working towards it, but this is just an example, and they're not the leaders and the entrepreneurs who are running that business, they're very clear they're not going to move out of it because they're seeing massive productivity gains since the time they become 100% remote, right?
Yeah.
So there is no business case for me to even go back and say, hey, listen, come back to office. It's not going to happen. The truth is, it's going to be 100% remote. The problem statement for me, my team is how do you build a connective tissue in that organization? How do you enable Anshuman is having coffee conversations in a remote environment, 100% remote? I am still struggling with it, right? Just as an example, this is an example I'm giving, Rishabh, but we can speak more. But that's where
Sure.
the challenge for an HR professional would be to be proactive and thinking about the impact on your people practices as this world changes and evolves into a new ways of working.
Fantastic. Ramesh G has asked a question to me. Why are you stopping yourself from writing a book? Ramesh Ji, you know the answer. I am the laziest person around, so it is just sheer laziness. One day that laziness will be overcome, and but to be fair, I know the books that I have to write, and they are in my mind, and one day they will come out. And with Saurabh's motivation, encouragement, I think it might be sooner. We are above time, Saurabh, and being a quality professional, I don't like to at least not follow time. So we will end on time, just above time. So thank you once again very much for the fantastic conversation. As I said in the opening, these are private tuitions which I enjoy, and the audience is there to learn. So thank you very much. And this is a space where I think that over the last few years, having been led teams, I have also built some um, point of view. So thank you for amplifying that, and also best of luck for your book. And we should do something when the book is actually out.
Absolutely.
So we are
Absolutely.
both in Bangalore. We will find a way. With
Absolutely.
that,
Thanks a lot.
I will let you go. And to my audience, one quick thing that the show will take a little bit of a break for 4 weeks or so, and then we'll be back once again with another set of guests. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.